Thank you very much. I feel very privileged to join you in this inaugural session of World Hydrogen India Summit by S&P. As I said, it's a privilege to be amongst a group of distinguished dignitaries, industry leaders, colleagues and friends. And let me start by sharing with you something that I have not said in public so far. Let this be the occasion. When my boss, the Honorable Prime Minister, announced the green hydrogen mission, that is that India would be pursuing green hydrogen in mission mode from the ramparts of the Red Fort on 15th August 2021, I had already been Minister for Petroleum and Natural Gas, which is for 2 years. And I'll come to the nomenclature and my title. I regarded the boss's statement at that point of time as a statement of intent. That is, he was signaling the entire ecosystem, government, and as you mentioned, public sector, or what we call our oil marketing companies, youngsters, innovators. And I thought it was a very timely, a very necessary statement of intent. I had no clue that the cumulative effort that would go in after that would result in the situation we are in today. Now, I want to choose my words carefully. Therefore, I will couch my sense of satisfaction because that pathway which we assumed in August 2021, that has today some concrete things to show, but even more, I think it holds promise for something even bigger. So let me start by saying that when he announced that, two things happened, if I remember clearly. One is that those of us in the government, which means different ministries, which had an interest in green hydrogen, they were divided, if I recall correctly, into 6 groups or clusters, etc. Because what would happen is that when you're starting something new, it always runs the risk of following between 2 stools. Because certainly green hydrogen is not big enough to perhaps require the attention by one full-time ministry. Because we are in a state of transition. You talked about energy security and energy sustainability. Let me tell you, I sometimes wonder why I am called the Minister of Petroleum and Natural Gas. Because in effect, most of my time is taken up on issues of energy transition. And security and sustainability are core features of that transition. Let me give you a few examples a little later if we have the time. The signaling and organizing in the government, that's important. Why do I say 6? You can very easily, if you don't know the functioning of any government from the outside, say, why don't you make it 1? No, wait a minute. There are ministries like railways, which want to power their locomotives with green hydrogen. There are ministries like transport, which want to use the hydrogen fuel cell to run buses. I mean, I'm giving you just 2 examples, and then there are my refineries. So I had a minister, then I think Minister Par at that point of time, who used to be a colleague, RK Minister Par tha na? Yeah, and MNRE. So he and I used to have healthy discussions. We both went back to days in Delhi University. I shouldn't say this, but he was a junior colleague when I was a civil servant, but he didn't like that. So he used to always assert, we will get green hydrogen done. I said, sure, you will get green hydrogen done, but I'm telling you, green hydrogen will succeed when my oil marketing companies can be persuaded and can be drawn into using green hydrogen in refineries. So this is one general point I made, but this is just an internal nice discussion. Now let me come to the success of green hydrogen and where it will succeed. Today, S&P Global think tanks, do tanks, experts in the field will talk about green hydrogen, because one thing they are clear on is that green hydrogen is the fuel of the future. And I'm a student of history, and if you're a student of history, you also start saying, how did changes come? They came through technology, many of them. I think it's the coal and steam, steam engine which started it. It was the initial industrial revolution, 1750 to 1850. They're doing quantum jumps. And I think the next quantum jump is the fuel cell and green hydrogen. Now, you need two things. You need a demonstrated capacity or an ability to produce clean solar energy at a reasonable price, and I think India has done that. I think we brought the price down, from 25 cents to 3 cents a megawatt. And you need an electrolyzer. Okay, I'm just giving you this background, and I'm also going to share with you one conclusion, and then I'll come to the substance of it. There will be a lot of research done on green hydrogen the world over. People will talk about it, people do it, but I submit to you, green hydrogen will ultimately succeed, and I'm talking about green hydrogen as a gas, will succeed where there is local demand, there is local production, and there is local consumption. And there are not many places in the world as uniquely qualified as India is to make that happen. That's my first submission. Green, because the gas does not lend itself to travel. Green ammonia, yes, and I think I have some good news there also, and I'll come to that in a minute. Let me start by saying that when the Prime Minister made that announcement on 15th August 2021, we set ourselves a target of producing 5 million tons of green hydrogen annually by 2030, supported by strong policy frameworks and a significant financial outlay. What was that financial outlay? I should have come to that. We have something called the Productivity-Linked Incentive Scheme, PLI, and I think we provided 19,700 crore rupees under that, did very well. So you have a government policy which provides a framework, you have a stated mission, you have a target, you have an ability to produce solar energy at a reasonable price, and you have about every electrolyzer manufacturer in the world coming here because they see potential. Now, when you start looking at the prospects of how a particular energy will do, you and I as professionals know it ultimately, it's a question of dollar and cents. So when I was new in this game, and after 2021, I used to ask all visiting dignitaries like yourselves and experts who showed me the courtesy of dropping in by for a chat, I would say, what is the cheapest price at which you can produce green hydrogen? And I think the figure I recall is somebody said we can produce it for $5.50 a kilogram. Now that was partly unsettling for me, because I remember my first conversation and as a newly appointed minister with my American counterpart, Jennifer Greenholm, at that point of time. And she said, Minister, we are very keen to do what is called 1 for 1 for 1. So I said, what's that? He said, 1 kilo of green hydrogen for $1 in 10 years. I said, that sounds very impressive. So if somebody turned around and said, and that is the objective, and you're only at $5.50 a kilo, then you have a long way to go. But as things went on, what we saw happening is that in the first tender which IOCL floated, which one of our companies, I think Larsen & Toubro, got, the price came down quite significantly from 550. If I remember correctly, it was around $4 something. Now, if you get it down by $1 in the first tender, then the next one was, I think, floated by HPCL. There it came down even more. And today I'm told that we are at hovering around $3.50. And these are only two tenders. And I am sure, and on that I can be more definitive, that as we expand, we replicate, we deepen, we are going to come below $3. Now I make a submission to you. India spends $150 billion annually on the import of energy. Tell me if from $3, from 3.50 to $3, if it comes down to 2.5 per kilogram, what's going to happen on public policy? Every time you have a conclave like this, or you have a gathering amongst the knowledgeable in the energy world, they'll all say, invest a little more, do something, and there will be a public clamor followed by sensible public policy to go for green hydrogen in a big way. Therefore, I share with you my assessment that our initial target of 5 million tons of green hydrogen annually by 2030, I personally think is a conservative target. I can say that now, and yet I started by telling you that when the mission was announced in August 2021, I was one of the first to say, oh my God, we set ourselves a target. But I think we have more or less demonstrated a capacity to meet targets when there is political will and ecosystem. I used to be ambassador to Brazil much before I went to the UN as ambassador. No, I was ambassador to the UN in Geneva before that. And I was personally fascinated with the biofuel story, ethanols. I was in Brazil, and I used to marvel that you could go to a petrol dispensing station and you could decide based on the price of ethanol that day and normal petrol. Even the base petrol then was, I think, 20%, if I remember correctly. It's many years ago. I'm talking about 2006, 19 years ago. I think the base petrol was already 20% mixed with ethanol, which is going up now. It went to 27, and I think they wanted to take it to 35 or something. And I said, when will we be able to do it in India? Well, we had an agriculture minister earlier, who's now a very senior statesman, opposition politician. He tried, but when we came to 2014, before the Modi era began, we'd only done about 1.4%. And that also, let me tell you, our initial target was to do it in 10 of our states and union territories, and all we could do overall was 1.4%. We set ourselves a target of biofuel blending of 10% by 2020, and we achieved that 5 months in advance. Then we set ourselves, not 2020, I think 2022, somebody will correct me. Then we set up a 20% target, I think by 2030. First target we achieved 5 months in advance, the next target we achieved 6 years in advance. And now I'm in the happy situation that people are having a fisticuff, which is all, we should take to 27%, somebody should take it. I said, I've told them, relax. Our target was 20%, we've reached 20%, we have all the stakeholders on board, we will consolidate, we will assess, and government policy will be worked out after we have got all the ecosystem, all the parts. Because initially there was SIAM, the Society of Indian Automobile Manufacturers, were telling me, oh no, this will happen to a car, that will happen. I said, nothing will happen to the car. They're doing it in Brazil. Then I brought a delegation from Brazilian, same automobile manufacturers, the German, the Japanese cars. Anyway, now they've all come to very clear. Some guys who have a little extra time try to troll us occasionally and oh, this happened to my engine, and I live in Gurugram and I find because I use ethanol blended, my engine efficiency has come down by 3% or something. So I have a good laugh. I said, anybody who's been between Delhi and Gurugram or Aero City, knows that your engine efficiency comes down not because of your what you've got in your fuel tank, but the amount of time you spend idling, like in Tokyo or in other capitals. So anyway, that's a joke. But seriously, we've done 20%. We've done a great thing. I'm very happy to tell you we didn't stop there. Compressed natural gas. When the prices were very high, I used to tell my colleagues, I worry we're putting in this infrastructure in. What will happen? I hope we don't have a no. They kept producing the cars and and the CNG supplies there. All in all, whatever we have undertaken in energy transition, they're doing well. But I think the real good news is going to be something. No, I could share with you that I'm very happy about what's happening in exploration and production. Today we are talking about green hydrogen. And I can say that 3 or 4 things. Larsen and Toubro's bid, which I mentioned, for the Indian oil at Panipat was for a 10 KTPA plant at 4.5 kilos, including GST. Now, that's a very important, if you take GST out. Okior Energy's bid for HPCL at Visakhapatnam was for a 5 KTPA plant at 4.39 kilograms, including GST, showing how global competition is driving the price discovery. Then Okior Energies has also won the tender for a supply of 5 KTPA of green hydrogen plant annually for 15 years at BPCL's Bina refinery. But now something else is very interesting is happening, and which is that I find that the tenders floated by the Solar Energy Corporation of India for green ammonia. By the way, our companies were already winning commercial contracts for supply of green ammonia because unlike the gas, green ammonia can be exported. And I remember 2 cases. One was a company in Germany, I think, they remember the name, I think. And I think the Singapore Electricity Authority, which is buying a new General Electric plant. And so here one Indian company was winning tenders to export green energy. Well, that's export. But now when I look at the domestic price, the tenders of the Solar Energy Corporation of India have been brought the lowest global prices at rupees 51,000 per ton. Now, I'm told that if you look at green ammonia prices elsewhere, this is far lower. But the beauty of it is, if you get this price in a place like India, which has manufacturing capacity and it's got a lot of utilization, I see the price coming down. So with low-cost solar power, one of the world's largest synchronous grids, a large domestic demand base, and unmatched engineering talent, India is well placed to emerge as a global champion in both production and exports of green hydrogen. Now, when you come to engineering talent, you hear a lot of these days in another context on which I will not touch. Do you know, out of the 500 Fortune, out of 50% of the world's Fortune 500 companies have global capability centers in India, where they use Indian engineering talent, where they use Indian technology and innovation system. Now 50% having them here, and I think employ 1.9 million people, if my figures, memory serves me right. I think more and more will that happen. And that the competitive edge that we have, and it will ensure, I think, that we not only meet our domestic decarbonization goals, but also become a hub for international trade in hydrogen and its derivatives. Now, some of the on-ground initiatives, then I shall wind up. Our oil and gas PSUs have collectively announced plans to set up 1 million tons per annum of green hydrogen capacity by 2030, signaling their readiness to lead the energy transition. PSUs, or public sector units, or what we call OMCs, oil marketing companies under the Ministry of Petroleum and Natural Gas, are in the process of floating tenders for procurement on a build, own, operate basis, BOO, with initial capacity of 42 KTPA expected to rise to 170 KTPA. under the National Green Hydrogen Mission, road transport, we have 37 vehicles, buses and trucks, and 9 hydrogen refueling stations to run different routes in the country. I was asked by my boss once to take the Prime Minister of Bhutan around Delhi in a bus which had the fuel cell green hydrogen. And of course, after that we decided that instead of it a normal passenger, we retrofitted it in luxury mode also. I think we had comfortable seats so that you could take a VIP, VVIP around. We have awarded 19 companies 900,000 tons per annum of green hydrogen production capacity under the National Green Hydrogen Mission. This is a significant stride towards becoming a global leader in green hydrogen and aiming to capture 10% of the global market in 2030. Now, that's a statistic I don't want to use too often, because I would like personally to see global hydrogen, green hydrogen come all over the world. Because if you are wedded to transition, as I think all of us here are, then it doesn't matter how many percentage we have. 10, we may have 8, but I want the global thing to rise, because I think that's where collective salvation lies, quite apart from what someone else may suggest to you. I think that transition is very necessary. Dedicated green hydrogen policies have been notified by our state governments. You know, we are a federal structure. We have cooperative federalism, so it's very important that our state governments be on board. And I'm very happy to say, so far, Andhra Pradesh, Maharashtra, Uttar Pradesh, and West Bengal. Insofar as the vision for the future is concerned, we have already shown, I think, what is possible. 2.6 gigawatt of solar energy by 2014 to over 123 GW today. I mean, the jump from 2.6 to 123 in 11 Modi years is, I think, significant. We have built a renewable base that can anchor hydrogen production at scale. And then finally, I would like to say that S&P Global Commodity Insights projects that by 2050, global hydrogen demand will grow at 3.5% annually, reaching 220 million metric tons per year, with 60% supplied by low-carbon sources. I hope you're right. More strength to your elbow. I would like to see by 2050 is too late for me, but 2030 and that. But you know, what is fascinating is to be part of that journey. And that's what I think is very. About 30% of this demand will come from new sectors such as transportation and power generation. In a more optimistic scenario, driven by strong climate policies and technological breakthrough, demand could even exceed 300 million tons annually, with over 70% supplied by clean sources, helping the world keep global temperature below 2 degrees Celsius by 2100. Now, I think in whatever way you look at this thing, I think we are in it together. I think this is a collective challenge. The investments and path forward also, I think, is something that we can collectively work on. And I think our roadmap is clear: scale up production, drive costs down, enable exports, and become a trusted global hub for green hydrogen. I mean, that's the overall message I want to give you. And I want to conclude by saying that with distinguished gathering like this, industry, investors, innovators, but I would like on our side to say that we would like to send you the message that hydrogen is not just a fuel of the future, but a pillar of energy security, economic competitiveness, and environmental stewardship. I extend my best wishes to you, sir, to S&P Global, and I want to wish all of you gathered here 2 days of fruitful, meaningful, and positive outcome-oriented deliberation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister. That's great. Honorable Minister Puri, thank you so much for so many thoughtful and detailed comments about the exciting work going on in India, taking leadership in green hydrogen. And if I may, I just want to ask you a couple of questions to go a little bit deeper into some of those topics while we have you in the audience here today. So I agree with you in your statement that we're all in this together. All of us have different roles in this room and listening online and taking these conversations forward. And like you, I hope that our projections for the size of the hydrogen market by 2050 are correct. And even that maybe the arc of history bends towards the bigger number, not the smaller number. But the work that's happening here in India will play a crucial role, really, in where we land on that. But I hope that we're right there, too, because it's an ambitious vision of the future. But even here in India, as you outlined for us here, some of the ambitious targets are already being matched or even exceeded. So maybe we can start with costs as a question. I was fascinated to hear you walk us through the progression in the tenders already, from $5.50 to $4.50, targeting maybe one day $1 per kilo future, one day, right? How do you think that the bending the cost curve down would impact energy imports on the one hand, and drive industrial uptake on the other? So, how does that cost curve coming down affect imports of energy and industrial uptake of hydrogen?
Well, first and foremost, since you said so many very thought-provoking things in that question, it's not a question, it's a statement and a question. Let me try and react. First of all, when we set targets, are we being ambitious or are we underestimating, overestimating? That's basically the question. I want to share an experience with you. When I was posted to Brazil as ambassador, it was year 2006, I think. I was there for 2006, 7, and 8. Midway, I came back. 2009, I went to New York. There was a point that the president of, I think it's called Unipar, their cooperative, Unica, he made. And he said, I want India to join this biofuel story. So I said, tell me why. He said, Brazil is already in there, but then, Brazil is different from India. Brazil has 3 times our land area, 1/6 our population, 22% of the world's freshwater reserves. India has a much larger population, pressure on land. We don't have that kind of freshwater luxury. But he said, if India joins, United States is already there. United States primarily makes biofuels from corn or maize. We are there, and I see the Chinese also doing. So he said, if you have India also joining, you will see that biofuels may actually become a tradable commodity. Now, he said that in a particular context. We were trying to do 1.4, we were trying to do 10% blending and, 5% blending. Sorry, I should have got that right. In 10 states, we wanted to do 5%. We couldn't even do that. We ended up in 2014, when Mr. Modi took over, we were only at 1.4% blending. Today, we have a global biofuels alliance. How many? 28 countries are a member of the global biofuels alliance. Today, every international organization which deals with energy is part, including people who are in the traditional fossil fuel industry. Some of those countries are there also, because they want to see what's happening. Look, energy is one thing where an estimation can be achieved and you can do better, because one thing there is no doubt on, that you will need more energy. Now, when you talk about, cost curve and what will happen to other things, my favorite story, and some of you may have heard it, so I don't mind repeating it. There was a guy who was a bright young economist working in Shell, I think in 1976. And he did some forward thinking. He said, oil is going to peak by the year 2000. Today, if you were to assign any young economist anywhere in the world, in any company, no matter which country you are in, he's not going to stick his neck out whether 2020 or 2030 or 2040 or 2050. So I think your estimation of 3.5% or 5%, the world economic progress, the hunger for energy, I think it's insatiable. So you will have a situation where you will have traditional energy, newer energies, technology jumps, that will go on for a long, because even the most optimistic scenarios on these things don't take you away to a displacement of the rest. That's a simple, layman's understanding of displacement and cost. But costs will come down. And when costs come down, manufacturing will be affected. Today, I have Tata Motors, I think, and my R&D lab of IOCL collaborating to make the fuel cell buses. And we have about 15 of them in Delhi, etc. But I want to use them for demonstration. I want the idea. I am very happy with events like this because then the message goes. There's not we alone, some egghead sitting somewhere. It's the international community, S&P Global. Everybody's involved in this kind of thing.
Great. I have time. I think we have time for one more question. I think if that's okay.
Lady already getting up. Maybe our time is over, but I'll take one more question. Yeah.
Okay. I think you and I are having too much fun up here. I
have a flight to catch also.
Oh, is that okay? In that case, I really have to get you out. Let me ask you that one last question while we're here together. And again, thank you so much for your time because these are important conversations. You mentioned the world's insatiable appetite for energy, and we often think of the hydrogen story as being part at S&P Global of an energy expansion, energy addition story. So I agree with your hypothesis there. So my final question for you is about the role that India can play as a global leader in exports. Now, we talk a lot about the size, the scale, the logistics inside of India to support development of this industry. But I think India has a unique opportunity to play an important role in exports as well.
100%, I'm with you.
How do you see that playing out?
No, I've seen, the green ammonia thing is a case in point. I was just, when my colleague walking in told me that he's just got to know that the Solar Energy Corporation tender prices had come down to 51,000 rupees a kilogram. So I immediately thought myself that the guys whom they exported it to must have been at a higher price. They are also going to, and as you increase your exports and you're doing more competitive price, you're competing against other countries. Look, I am almost, I should choose my words carefully. I am reasonably confident, more than reasonably confident, India will be a major exporter in this sector, in green ammonia or whatever else goes into the ecosystem, technology, etc., in collaboration with Western companies, etc. It's what my boss says, Atmananda, make in India for the world. That kind of an approach.
Wonderful. Well, we could talk about this even longer, but you have a plane to catch and I have another speaker to introduce. So, Minister Puri,
thank you. I enjoyed this very much.
Great
Thank
to have
you so
here.
much.
Thanks very much.